then in my observation, when that's allowed to happen, because there's a publication that happens every year called the Economic Freedom of the World, and it does surveys all over the world measuring the correlation between hunger, quality of life, and so forth, as related to economic freedom. And consistently, the more economic freedom there is in any area, the more justice there is, the more prosperity there is. So some of the aspects of a healthy economy that we represent in the film as a torus, and then contrasted with the tapeworm consuming the torus from inside, some of the aspects of a healthy torus are what Elizabeth Sahtouris, an evolution biologist who's featured in our film, calls the features of healthy living systems. And one of those features is balance of energy in and out. So in a torus, you need to have, in order to sustain the form, you need to have a balance of the energy that's going out with the energy that's going in. And that's what Nassim has identified beyond any physicist that I've previously seen as what sustains a healthy torus is not just the radiation, the expanding energy that physicists study, but also the genero-activity, the inward spiral, the life-forming spiral. And you need to have a balance of those two. And, how does that translate? Well, everybody really is running a business. Whether you have an official business or not, you're running your own personal economy. And ultimately, you need to have a sufficient balance of your income with your expenses. You need to take into consideration your costs with your benefits in order to keep your own personal economy in mind. So those are a couple of aspects. Another one is reciprocity. Another is empowerment of all parts. These are qualities of the features of healthy living systems that are also qualities of a healthy toroidal system. And we're just going to be, I think, starting to learn now, what does that mean? What does reciprocity mean? What does empowerment of all parts mean? And in an economy, a regional or global economy. And fundamentally, I think it's always going to come back to honoring the voluntary exchange of each individual. And then the one last thing I'll say about that is that the whole question of growth is a huge one on the planet right now, because we have the impression that the capitalist system is based on infinite growth and therefore is unsustainable, and it really becomes a cancer on the planet. And I think it's a misunderstanding. I mean, it's a misunderstanding that I think a lot of huge corporations have. But Buckminster Fuller once again pointed out that as we grow in our consciousness, what also grows is what he called ephemerality, which is the ability to do more with less. So if you think of the original IBM computers taking up an entire building and having less power than is now in your iPhone, we've been growing in consciousness and growing in our ability to do more with less. And if you look at energy systems, you look at the difference between the internal combustion engine or nuclear fission and the free energy devices that we depict in the film. Once again, we're learning to do more with less in a clean, healthy way. So I think that just like if you walk out into the woods or you go into a garden, you're going to see infinite growth going on, but in a way that relates harmoniously to its environment. At the same time that the trees and bushes and so forth are growing, there's also natural decay. There's also a natural shrinking once a plant system has reached its boundary, or a species has reached a boundary, the population will start to stabilize. So I think that one of the key things that we need to realize is that we can't stop growth, but it's growth that's natural and appropriate, aligned with natural principles, rather than the sort of runaway destruction of the environment and destruction of people's lives that is a fundamental violation both of ecology and of individual rights. And that's the cancerous type of growth. That's what we need to move away from, but it doesn't mean stopping natural growth.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just said there. Because like when I look at the human body, we replace our cells every 7 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or by 7 years, we've replaced all of our cells. So each cell has at some point died and been replaced. And cancer is when you have cells that don't die. They just keep replicating.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cancer starts taking the nutrients from the body. It takes the glucose and the sugar and all that. And it's starting to feel like, as a society, we're malinvesting. We're investing in the cancer of Wall Street or whatever we want to call it. And the healthy cells are starving. But we don't even have the concept of enough. It's like in this culture, everything is more. Have more stuff, more things. You're not taught to aim for enough. You're taught to aim for more. Mm-hmm. And that's just run away. And so that's why I'm thinking that the torus, one of the most brilliant pieces of the torus, is that it has the cycles of decline and expansion, because we've gone insane here.
Yeah. And in the film, Adam Trombley, when he's talking about the free energy device that he and his partner David Farnsworth created, we did the depiction of it as a breathing mechanism, and he describes it really beautifully, because if you're going to harmonize with the ambient energy field in which we all live, you have to be breathing, because that's what the universe is doing in every toroidal system. It's balancing the pulse of the inflow with the outflow, and we see it in our heartbeat, which is a big torus. We see it in our breath, where the lungs are a big torus, but it's also there in the electromagnetic pulse around around our bodies that we can't see, but when it's measured, it also has the kind of pulsation that we measure as various frequencies. So a lot of what I see coming now is this whole vibrational awareness of how does nature operate, and how can we take a feminine approach of learning to dance with it in harmonic resonance, rather than to dominate, control, explode it, which has been, unfortunately, our approach so far. And it's gotten us here, but it threatens all life as we know it now. So we're really at that critical turning point where we have to learn to honor nature's natural flow and align with it if we're going to survive, much less thrive.
So, the film is named Thrive, so you're focused on thriving, which most people tend to think of as expansion. How would you include cycles of decline or stasis or death as part of balance?
For me, thriving is exactly what you said. Thriving is balance. If you're only focused on expansion, pretty soon your system will be burned out. And in fact, some of the first people trying to create free energy devices tried to put them inside a sphere, or tried to put them inside a box, and they would all either freeze or fry, because they were either exaggerated in the direction of expansion or contraction. But once they started using toroidal systems, which are open so that they can balance the flow in and out, that's when they started to actually access this infinite energy that's available everywhere in the universe.
Thank you. That's helpful.
And thank you, Green Meadow. We appreciate your questions. Very thoughtful. And Foster and Kimberly, those were very thoughtful answers. We do appreciate it. The movie and website propose solutions to help humanity. The next few questions applicable to this topic area will be posed by Gemini. Gemini?
Thank you, McLaren. This question is from Fox. Why do you think that the system can change from the inside? They have been saying that for years, and yet it only continues to get worse. Not to mention that this seems to be a conflict of interest, and that changing it from the inside will only ensure the entrenched power's place in the whole scheme of it all.
Well, personally, I'm not holding my breath for any major transformation coming from the inside. I think people who are, quote unquote, on the inside have sold out to and depend on the agenda to such a degree that they will be the last ones to respond. Plus, I don't think that's the way nature really works. I think that one of the reasons why we're looking to help facilitate the empowerment of a self-creating global movement is that if it's self-creating, then it's decentralized and it's happening everywhere. It's like sprouts, in a field or something like that. So it can't just be negated or cut off at some central root. It's really happening in people's consciousness as opposed to through some particular personality or some particular organization. So I think that personally that the Occupy movement is a wonderful indication of what's arising around the world now, where people are waking up and getting together without looking for a leader or without looking to affiliate with a particular political party on the usual polarized spectrum or a particular institution, but to actually sit down where everybody is equal, gets an equal voice, and where the discussion is intended for new thinking to emerge that can actually transcend the old system. And once that begins to emerge, which I think is happening all over the world, I think it's happening in Thrive, it's happening in Occupy, it's happening in the Arab Spring, it's happening in publications and media all over the place. And Paul Hawken talks in the film about how there's over 1 million, actually he's saying now it's closer to 2 million organizations worldwide that are not cults of personality, but are self-creating movements for peace, for social justice, and for environmental sustainability. So it's the largest movement in history, and it's really the first global revolution, and I think it's coming up everywhere. It's like scientists now say every point is the center of the universe rather than there's a particular point. And I think that the global emergence is happening the same way, that every individual can be the center of the global emergence if they choose to. And in fact, that's the only way that it's going to work, because we can't count on the people who played the political and financial game of old effectively to change that game from the inside, because they're dependent on it. They're trained in it. So I'm looking for a whole new way of transformation rather than a traditional political vote or a party or something like that.
I want to chime in here that I think that, we do so that is our vision, and that's like when we talk about the 3 stages, that we're very much for the decentralized, self-organizing response and creativity. And, the reason that in the top 10 strategies there would be something like campaign finance reform is that in order to get to an honest economic system, we have to get rid of the Federal Reserve. And how do you get rid of the Federal Reserve if you can't? There's a process that's probably going to happen to take them out. And that process is going to require that there be some people in office who are actually carrying out the intention of the people they represent. And as long as they're being paid by the corporations, that can't happen. Now, can we get rid of the Federal Reserve without it being a state process? Yeah, there can be a level of revolution that does that. And we need to be able to empower all kinds of alternatives that can then come in their own self-creating way to see which one's best and how does it go. But that's a really messy and painful process, potentially. So part of it is to say, okay, how are we going to get from here to there? Because the most bold, intelligent, radical ideas for where we need to be often skip sort of the transition between here and there and the number of people who are relying on this particular financial system meanwhile. So that was kind of the balance that we struck in naming this 3-part strategy. Was really a matter of how realistically we can truly have the level of revolution that we need to have while doing as little damage in the process. So